Hello, everyone. This is Kerwin, and today we are going to be talking about how to book the cheapest fare. Let's go. Now, I am not a big proponent of booking the cheapest fares. Uh, I've, if you look through my social media feed and all the kind of stuff, I'm always telling you the cheapest fare is not always the best fare for you. But everyone buys the cheapest fare anyway, and then they have troubles later. So I'm going to try to answer that for you. Now, one of the questions that people always ask is, which day of the week should I book book the cheapest fare? It doesn't really matter. You see all these myths that are out there about when to book the cheapest fare. It doesn't matter the time that you book it. It's really when you want to travel. And nowadays, it doesn't even matter anymore because I was just looking at some fares earlier today, and it was like $2,000 to go to London next month. And typically, because we're in September already, typically next month is a low season, but it's not anymore. It's $2,000. So it's very, very different than it is. However, though, there are times of the day that you can travel that will get you better fares. For example, if you book, say, in the mornings, like the first flight of the day is sometimes cheaper. I say sometimes because this is not always the case. I do Houston to Miami from time to time. Sometimes the 5:30 flight is not the cheapest. Why? Because that is a flight that connects to a lot of flights in Miami, which is where American Airlines is based. So it just depends on where you're going and what time of the year that you're flying. That's another factor that's in there. Usually people don't want to get up early in the morning, so that's why normally the first flight is normally cheaper. But that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. If you want to book a connection, connecting flights are usually cheaper. And the reason why they're cheaper is because it's going to take you longer. Now, as a frequent flyer trying to earn points and miles, connecting flights are my best friend. If you do the destination is also important, right? So if you want to go, let's say you're going to New York, the fares to LaGuardia might be different. Not might be. The fares to LaGuardia are different than the fares to Newark and the fares to JFK. So you need to figure out where exactly is going to work for me. And so oftentimes I will go into Newark, although I do have to pay $15 to get on the New Jersey Transit train that takes me into Manhattan, which, so you have to figure the cost. So that's going to cost me $30 round trip. If the fare for me to get to LaGuardia is about the same, then I may do that because to get from LaGuardia to Manhattan is $2.75 on the select service bus. The M60 that takes you from LaGuardia to the number 4506 train, or the 1, 2, or 3 train, or then the A, C, or E train. So it just depends on where you want to go in the city. But that's only $275 because I get a free transfer. And so 15, and that's for $275 round trip as opposed to $15 round trip. But if I look at how much the fare is going to cost me plus the ground transportation, then I have to think about that as well. If I go to JFK, the cost is slightly different because I think it's now $875 you got to pay to get from Jamaica Station into Manhattan. And so it just depends, right? So look at the fare. Don't just look at the fare you're buying. Look at the complete transportation or the complete trip, because that's really what's going to determine how much you pay. The other side of things is if you book an online agency, sometimes online agencies have a cheaper fare, or they have a routing that you can't find on the airline's website. So if you go to something like Skyscanner, and that's passradar.com/Skyscanner, they will give you a whole bunch of different routings. Now, I like online agencies and I don't like online agencies. And here's why. When you book, so if let's say I go to an online agency and I book, the Expedias, the Skyscanners, the Pricelines, the Orbits of the world, and I have an issue. I cannot call the airline. I have to call the online travel agency, because they're the only ones, they're in control of my reservation until my day of travel. Sometimes even during my day of travel, if I have a cancellation, the airlines will usually rebook you because they have what they call control of the ticket, and they will rebook you on usually on another flight. But if there's like a rerouting or something like that, you need to call the agency to reroute you. Now, while the airline will maybe route you for free, the online agency may charge you like a $25 fee or something like that. So bear those little things in mind. When you buy the ticket from the online agency, you may have to pay a fee, usually like $25 or $30 or something like that. They're supposed to show it to you. Normally nobody reads, but usually they charge you a fee. I can call, when I book with an airline, I can call the airline and I can talk to them ad nauseum. And because of my frequent flyer status, they can make changes that may or may not cost me anything or cost me less, depending on my status and things like that. Sometimes, depending on the price of the ticket you buy, you have what's called a same day change, which means that I can change my flight on the same day I'm traveling at no extra cost, but only if I buy the more expensive ticket. If I buy a basic economy ticket, I can't do that. It's not going to happen. Unless there is like a hurricane coming in and then I have to change it. They let you change it regardless. One-time change usually. If my flight is canceled, that I'm entitled to a refund. And now I can rebook my ticket or anything I want, because I'm entitled to the refund. So when this is why when I say do not buy the cheapest fare, because buying the cheapest fare might be the most expensive thing you ever do. Buy the fare that gives you the most flexibility that you can afford. Sounds a little, weird, but just think about how that works, right? You want to make sure that if you need to make a change, you can make the change. Now, the airline's always trying to upsell you because that's their job, right? They want to get the most money out of you. You need to determine, is this going to be right for me? I don't buy refundable tickets because I don't need a refundable ticket. But I know that with my status, I can do same day changes, usually. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And what's the same day change? I can explain. If you want to go, let's say you're booked on the 10 a.m. and you want to go on the 5 a.m. If you try to, you get the change option. If you're in a basic economy ticket, I'm talking about American Airlines now, but it works for pretty much all the airlines. If you're in a really, really cheap ticket, you can't do the change. But if you're not, then you try to make the change. It gives you the option and it tells you, you can make this change at no charge, or you can make this change and it's $25 or it's $30 or whatever the change is. And you make the change, you're happy and you're done. So always check that. A lot of people don't look at the rules of the ticket when they buy the ticket. And that's also very important, because and the airlines do tell you, you just check your box and go. But the airlines do tell you what the rules of the ticket is. It's there. You have a little box that you can click on the box and it tells you if you can make a change, what's the cost for the change, especially at international. You may have like a $200 change fee. But if you bought a ticket for a little more, you may not have the change fee. So just always check that kind of thing. I'm just checking my notes here to see if I had anything else that I missed. If you fly on the budget airlines, you normally can't change your ticket. What you buy is what you buy. And if you miss it, you've lost the amount of money that you've spent. Or some of them will actually give you a voucher. If they cancel a flight, they may not book you on another airline because they don't have any agreement with another airline. The agreement is called an interline agreement. And if they don't have that with another airline, then they can't book you on another airline. So you can see that flight leaving and you can't get on it. The airlines normally have the Department of Transportation in different countries dictates how they operate. So there's always something in the contract of carriage, which is what the airline rules of the airlines have when you buy your ticket. It normally tells you what you can do and what you can't do. Read it, please. I know 9 times out of 10, no one reads it, but it's like, it's like when you're on the plane and the flight attendant is giving you the safety things and nobody's watching. That's kind of how the contract of a carriage works. However, though, if something happens, that is a document that you can hold and say, okay, airline, you said that if you cancel my flight, you're going to get me from point A to point B within 6 hours. You don't have a flight within 6 hours and I need to get where I'm going. So guess what? You need to book me on another airline. It's sad that you have to basically pull the card on the airlines, but that's kind of how it works. But if you know how the system works, then you can use it in your favor. People say flying midweek. Yes, if you fly on a Tuesday or Wednesday, normally the fares are cheaper. But I'll tell you, I've been looking at some fares and it doesn't matter when you go. That's it. Now, some destinations are only served on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So guess what? The fare is going to be expensive anyway. Everybody works or have some, I shouldn't say everybody, most people work, have some kind of way that they make money. And it's normally Monday through Fridays. So on weekends is when they can travel and everybody wants to travel on a weekend. It's going to cost you more. That's kind of how it works, supply and demand, right? Let's see. You can also use the different airports, right? I spoke about the New York area. Like Dallas, for example. Dallas is a really weird one. They've got Dallas Love Field and Dallas Fort Worth. Dallas Fort Worth is American's hub. Dallas Love Field is Southwest. Typically, if you're flying in the Southwest because of a low fare carrier, you get a cheaper fare, usually. Flying into Dallas, Fort Worth, the fares are going to be a little more expensive. Some places you can, a lot of big cities don't have multiple airports. Miami does have Fort Lauderdale and Miami. And it's interesting, people who live in Fort Lauderdale, they will never go to Miami. It's weird. Or they don't, I shouldn't say, well, it depends. They kind of don't want to go to Miami, but because it's, I don't know, you have to be in Florida to get it. But that's typically what happens. So in New York, you've got JFK, LaGuardia, White Plains, Westchester County, and Stuart Newburgh. Stuart Newburgh is upstate New York. It's not too far. You can take the Metro North up to Beacon, and then you take a little taxi over to there. There are flights that go out of there. I think JetBlue goes out of there, and this new airline Play, and also Atlantic Airways flies out of there as well. But it just depends on which city you're going into. Los Angeles has Burbank, Orange County, which is SNA, Long Beach, I think it's LBG for Long Beach, or LGB. I think it's LGB or LBG, Long Beach, I think. I'm stumbling because there's also Le Bourget, and Le Bourget is LBG, so Long Beach must be LGB. So that's an easy way to remember, right? There's, of course, LAX, which is the biggest one. And so there's LAX, ONT, SNA, BUR for Burbank, and LGB for Long Beach. And in San Francisco, there's Oakland, San Francisco, and there's also San Jose, which is not too far. You can take the train from San Jose into San Francisco if that's where you need to get to. The other Seattle is just Seattle. Minneapolis is Minneapolis-St. Paul. So it's just one airport. So is Detroit. We spoke about New York. Boston just has one. And if you go international, Paris has Beauvais, which is Ryanair flies into Beauvais. But then you're going to take a bus from there into the city. You've got Charles de Gaulle and you've got Orly. Those are the other two airports. In Paris and London, you've got Southend, London City, Heathrow, Gatwick, Stansted, and Luton. So there's actually 6 airports that's in that area. The Gatwick and Heathrow are the 2 biggest ones, and those are the ones that have a lot of the international flights. And I say international from like other outside of Europe typically will fly into those 2. Plus, I mean, domestic Europe still flies into Gatwick and Heathrow as well. I think those are probably Berlin. Well, Berlin used to have 3 airports: Tempelhof, Tempelhof, Tegel, and I forget the name of the other one, but the other one is now Berlin, BER, which is and I think they're using the old one for as a private airport. Same runway, they all sit in the same location. And I actually think there's an airline that flies into the old terminal that they have. But Tegel was the main one forever. And then they've well, for a long time. And now it's now BER, Berlin Brandenburg, which took forever to build. And for some reason, XXS as in Sam, X as in X-ray, F as in Frank, was the name for the other one. And I still can't remember the name. That was a code, I remember the name for it. But anyway, it's not, this is BER now, and that's it. So those are typically the airports that if you're going into another city, then you can do that. Now, there are some places where you can drive. And some people will, like, in the Midwest, people will drive, 2-3 hours to get to an airport. People here in Texas, people will drive as well, because you've got San Antonio, you've got Austin, and sometimes the fares are ridiculously expensive. But San Antonio, like Houston, San Antonio is 3 hours. Houston, Austin is 3 hours. Austin, San Antonio is probably 2 hours, I think. Dallas is 4 hours from Houston. So the airports are not close to each other. So you might as well just pay, because by the time you get in your car, pay for gas and all that kind of stuff, it's going to be too far away. There are a number of online sites that you can book cheaper fares, but I do suggest you can use Skyscanner, password.com/Skyscanner, Expedia, password.com/Expedia, and you can also go to google.com/flights, and then it'll show you a whole bunch of flights for wherever you want to go, give you all the prices, and you can see which one has the cheapest. Again, don't necessarily buy the cheapest one, because they probably have a lot of restrictions, and the restrictions may not be what you need. So this is booking a fare and the ticket online is very complex, and it takes quite a bit of time to do it. So just make sure that you know what you're doing. And again, in the US, we have the low-cost carriers. There's Sun Country, there's Allegiant, there is Spirit, there's Frontier, there's JetBlue. Although JetBlue is kind of not really low cost anymore, because they're going international, all that kind of stuff now. And there is, and outside of that, there is Alaska Airlines, and American Airlines is part of One World. Then there's United, which is a part of Star Alliance, and there's Delta, which is a part of the SkyTeam Alliance. And there's South, which is not in any alliance at all. I don't think I missed anyone. I think I got all the airlines, and I mentioned Alaska Airlines as well. So those are typically the main US airlines. You can book directly with them, or you can start with a service, like I said, the Skyscanners or the Google Flights, and then look at the fares from there. Also, the baggage part of it, I did another piece on baggage. Check your baggage requirements when you buy the tickets. Also, sometimes the difference between the first class fare and the economy fare is very close. It's sometimes the cost of a bag, just depending on how far out you're booking it. So check that. And another thing about booking tickets that can save you money is, if you are a party of 2 or 3 that's traveling, when you do say I want 3 tickets, and it comes up and it says it's $300, so it's $100 each pretty much. But when you book two, if you book two and one, the fare comes out cheaper. The reason why that happens is they didn't have three tickets at the same price, because when you buy a ticket with three people in it, each fare has to be the same. And I say the same because everything is in a little bucket. So you see those are the letters next to your ticket. Like you may see Y, V, J, A, or something like that. That is what controls the price of your ticket. They call them buckets. So if they don't have enough availability, i.e. enough seats, i.e. enough fares in a particular bucket, then they can't give you three of the same. So what you're going to do is go to the next bucket and find out, do I have three of the same? Then says, yes, I've got three of the same, so I'll give you that. But below, you could have gotten two at one price and one at another price, because the prices are different in different. They're in different buckets and the prices are the same. This happens when it's closer into the time that you're trying to travel. Now, the thing about this, though, is if you book everybody in separate reservations, trying to get seats together is going to be an issue sometimes. So if you're traveling with, and if you have children, you can't put the children by themselves if they're under whatever the airline have determined unaccompanied minors to be. So it gets a little complex, right? So bear all that in mind when you're trying to book your tickets. I hope this helped. This is a little long one. I didn't want it to be this long, but I knew I needed to explain. It's not just as easy as going, oh yeah, I'm going to go buy this cheap fare, especially if you're traveling with more than one person. So this is Kerwin with PassRider.com, Cruisinaltitude.com for another episode of Travel Talk. Have a great trip.